Hello and welcome to Miss Yusuf's English class. In this video, we are going to explore Felix Randal by Gerard Manley Hopkins. But first, some background notes on the poet. Gerard Manley Hopkins was born in Essex near London in 1844 and studied at Oxford, where he converted to Roman Catholicism. He was ordained as a Jesuit priest in 1877, and some of his poems reflect the conflict that he felt between his religious vocation and the attraction of the sensory world. Hopkins experimented with poetic techniques, and he attempted to capture the natural world through his original use of rhythm, alliteration, and internal rhyme. Hopkins died in 1889 of typhoid fever. Let's read Felix Randal. Felix Randal the Farrier. Oh, he is dead then. My duty all ended, who have watched his mould of man, big-boned and hardy, handsome, pining, till time when reason rambled in it, and some fatal for disorders fleshed there. All contended. Sickness broke him. Impatient he cursed at first, but mended, being anointed and all. Though a heavenlier heart began some months earlier, since I had our sweet reprieve and ransom tendered to him. Ah well, God rest him all road ever he offended. This seeing the sick endear them to us too it endears. My tongue had taught thee comfort, touch had quenched thy tears that touched my heart, child. Felix, poor Felix Randal, how far from then forethought of all thy more boisterous years, when thou at the random grim forge, powerful amidst peers, didst fettle for the great grey dray horse his bright and battering sandal. Okay, let's go line by line. Felix Randal the Farrier. Oh, he is dead then. This poem opens with a reference to the title character. We get to know in the first line that he is a blacksmith. Okay, a smithy. It's his job to turn metal into all sorts of useful instruments, tools, weapons, utensils. Okay, so immediately we get the image of a very strong man. And the image of Felix Randal as a strong man is carried through the poem in the form of a comparison, a paradox, and we're going to go through that. Oh, he is dead then. The tone of this line is spoken almost dismissively, but you could say that it's spoken in a dismissive tone, not with any absolute certainty right now. You could tentatively say that it's spoken dismissively, and then in the course of the poem you could decide whether this line is dismissive based on the attitude of the speaker later on. You're going to find in the poem whether there is sincerity or whether it's dismissive. So we're going to look at, oh, he is dead then, as being spoken in a dismissive tone, with disregard to the main character, well, the title character, or we could see whether we were mistaken in judging the speaker. That'll come a little later. My duty all ended. So the speaker is saying he's dead now, my duty with him is over, right? It's spoken with a very quick acceptance. Right? Felix Randal has died. The speaker doesn't appear to be too flustered about it, too upset about it. And he is not shocked at the death. And all he has to say is that my duty to him is over. Me, who have watched his mould of man, big-boned and hardy, handsome. Right? Me, I, who have watched him go from this big mold of man, big-boned and hardy, handsome. So, tying in very closely with the farrier, the image that we get in the first line, our image of Felix Randal as a man, as a human being, is confirmed here. Right? He is strong. He is powerful. To do the job that he's doing, it requires strong physicality. Right? And the speaker here confirms that. I have watched him go from a big mold of man, big-boned, obviously big in size, hardy, handsome, to what? pining, right? Now, again, you have this image of a paradox. You've got this incredibly strong, hardy, handsome, big mold of a man. Gives you the image of someone very powerful, someone very strong. And then you have pining. Pining is exactly the opposite of that. Yearning, longing, right? It's almost effeminate, this line here, pining. It shows vulnerability, it shows weakness, it shows helplessness, right? So the speaker is describing to us how Felix Randal diminished as a person, how he deteriorated as a man. He went from being hardy, handsome, big mold of a man to being someone who pines and pines. And we're going to find the reason for his pining in the next line. Till time when reason rambled in it, right? Till the time where some reason, some sense, some justification, right, was given to him. Of course, the speaker is suggesting that he's the one who offered Felix Randal some justification, some explanation, some wisdom behind his pain. And whatever he was pining for now, the speaker was able to quell that. Right. Some 4 fatal disorders fleshed there. Right. The 4 fatal disorders, this poem obviously takes place in the 1880s, 1870s, where medicine was not advanced, a lot was not known, was not discovered yet about health and medicine and the human body. There's an old belief, almost ancient belief, in the 4 humors that make up the human body. And if there's an imbalance in any of these 4 fluids or 4 humors, it would give you a certain disorder, based on either having too much of one of the 4 humors or a combination of them, or having too less of it, right? So when there's an imbalance in the humors, you could get one of the, you could suffer from something. Whatever you suffered an excess of or a deficiency of determined what disorder you suffered from, right? And so the problem with only having this very restricted or limited information or prognosis is that it doesn't account for a lot of things. It's either like, if you have too much of this, you are suffering from that condition and that condition. If you have too much of that, you're suffering from that condition. It's very, very restrictive, very, very limited information, very, very limited medical care could be afforded to people, because it wasn't treating them for what they actually suffered for. It was only measuring their balance of humors in their body. So obviously there's no way for us to know exactly what Felix Randal died from now in our day and age, but the speaker is saying that one of the fatal 4 disorders, one of the humors and imbalance, is what caused him to diminish and die. Right, sickness broke him. This line, I isolated it because I think that it gives you a very tragic image. A Farrier, a strong, hardy, handsome, big-boned mold of a man, broken by his own body. It's tragic, it's devastating, it's painful. And as a reader, as a listener, we could empathize so strongly with this man who was sick and died. We can understand now he's pining. We can understand how somebody who's able-bodied and strong and virile and vital, how they could go from such good health and such immense power and such masculinity, right, to be broken by his own body. It's tragic, it's heartbreaking. And you would think that the speaker would be a little more empathetic, a little more compassionate, especially being a man of God, and especially being somebody who apparently cared for the dying Felix Randal. But he doesn't seem to be as affected as we may be as a more empathetic audience. Right, more lines describing the speaker's character, not the speaker's character, the title character. Impatient he cursed at first, impatient, like pining. When Felix Randal began to get sick, he was very impatient with himself. He would be cursing, he would be very irritable, he'd be very annoyed. And the reason is because he was a strong, independent man. And his body was attacking him from the inside. He was getting sick and weak and frail. And he wasn't probably able to do the things that he used to do. He probably depended on someone else for care and for comfort and for little things that we take for granted as healthy people. And of course he was impatient, right? But the speaker is not showing us a natural empathy. He's saying, but mended being anointed and all. His impatience was mended by me after I anointed him, after I blessed him, after I gave him an explanation, after I gave him a sermon, after I gave him counseling. The speaker is under the impression that he's the one who helped Felix Randal to deal with and embrace his condition. Though a heavenlier heart began some months earlier, right? But there was a change in him and his acceptance and embracing of God and religion, a change of heart that made him more pious, that made him more devout, a little earlier in his sickness. What made the change? What caused the change? The next line, since I had our sweet reprieve and ransom tendered to him. Right, as he got sick, he became very impatient, but I anointed him and he came right. But even before that, when he started getting sick, I gave him sweet reprieve. And I tended to him counseling and God's word. And that's what caused the change in Felix Randal's attitude, in Felix Randal's mental health, in Felix Randal's acceptance of his condition. So again, you have a man foregrounded at the beginning as having been sick and died, but then he's pushed to the back seat now where the speaker is foregrounding himself. And he's saying that it was all me that helped him. It was I who saved him. It was I who redeemed him. Ah, well, God rest him all road ever he offended. Ah, well, God forgive him for whatever he may have done to trespass God's law. Ah, well. Now, remember earlier when I said, oh, he is dead then, I told you just watch for the tone of the speaker. He appears to be very disrespectful almost, very flippant, very cavalier about the news of Felix Randal's death. And I asked you whether he was dismissive, and I told you just pay attention to the diction and the tone of the speaker in the rest of the poem. This is what I was referring to. Ah, well. Oh, well, that's done. That's over, right? For me, it speaks of dismissiveness. It says to me that the speaker cared only superficially for Felix Randal, okay? And the tone that he says, well, God forgive him, that's done. My duty is over. I helped him. I redeemed him. I can rest in peace, knowing that I've done all that I could do. So that dismissive tone here is reinforced. Therefore, our initial opinion of the speaker and his tone is supported here. Right, this seeing the sick endears them to us too it endears. Right, when we care for the sick, we become important to them, we become significant to them, we become dear to them. They love us because we serve them and take care of them and we offer them comfort. And in our heart, they also have a special place. This is what the speaker is saying about those who are sick and those who tend to them. He's giving us this impression that there's a mutual love, a mutual affection and affinity and empathy that exists between the sick and their caregivers. And that's quite that's quite a fair assumption to make. When people are sick, they love their caregivers, and their caregivers in turn love them for allowing them that. Right? But look at the next line. My tongue hath taught thee comfort. My touch has quenched thy tears. Very active in the poem. Okay, he's not saying you were comforted by me or I offered you comfort. Right? He seems to be taking on a greater significance than the title character, as if to say that it was I with my words that offered you help. It was my touch that stopped you from being upset. Thy tears that touched my heart, child, Felix, poor Felix Randal, right? The sincerity of this line can be questioned given everything that he has said, not just so much the words that he said, the speaker, but the tone in which he said it. When he said, thy tears that touched my heart, child, Felix, poor Felix Randal, again, you have to question whether he's being sincere, whether he really was touched in his heart by Felix Randal's tears, especially when he says the word child. The reason is because child, it's a very dismissive word. It's almost a derogatory word to refer to a man who you acknowledged as once being hardy, handsome, big-boned, big mold of a man, right? To call him now a child is to subordinate him, is to make him inferior to you. right? To take the big, strong blacksmith and refer to him as a child. It really questions the sincerity of the words that the speaker is saying, right? The speaker is taking on all of the credit for how this man diminished from being a strong man, virile and vital and strong and physically powerful, to a child. And he completely, I think, strips Felix Randal of that masculinity that is owed to him. Okay? Because now when we as readers read the poem, our image that we had in the first line of Felix Randal has diminished, just like his health. And we now see him as a weak, vulnerable child, which Felix Randal does not deserve. Poor Felix Randal. Poor, shame, pity. Okay? And Felix Randal doesn't deserve that. He deserves our respect because he wasn't always weak and vulnerable and sick. He was at one time very strong and very powerful. But the speaker is not, he's not taking that into consideration. He's not really honoring Felix Randal for the life that he lived. He's only glorifying his contribution to the end of Felix Randal's life as he got sick and he diminished. How far from then forethought of all thy more boisterous years, how far you have gone from what you were to what you are. What a different person you are as you died than you were in your younger years. Boisterous, okay? Vital, full of life, vivacious, tenacious, okay? Again, a tone of pity, not remembering Felix Randal as a strong, powerful Farrier, right? Saying how far you were from that man that you were and what you ended up being, right? When thou at the random grim forge amidst a powerful amongst peers, when you would go to a forge and you would measure yourself and you would be more powerful among everyone else. Again, emphasizing that initial image we have of Felix Randal. He was at one time very, very strong, very, very vital, right? He could go to a forge and he could work it. And he would be the strongest among all the other farriers. Didst fettle for the great grey dray horse his bright and battering sandal. Right, the last line now. It's a parallel, right? A dray horse and Felix Randal. When a horse is bred, they're bred for power, they're bred for stamina, they're bred for strength, speed, right? And you could say that Felix Randal, being a farrier, he had all of these qualities. He had the incredible strength, he had the incredible stamina, he had the incredible virility about him, right? The thing is that when the grey horse starts getting sick or when it's injured, it no longer has that same glory. It no longer shines. It no longer is given recognition and acknowledgement. It's no longer celebrated. And the speaker is suggesting that just like a dray horse will like pale into oblivion and disappear, Felix Randal was at one time a powerful man, and now he will just disappear. Okay? Which again is not really fair because it's focusing on Felix Randal's weakness rather than his strength. Okay. That brings us to the end of our poem. I'd like to acknowledge Slides Carnival for the beautiful presentation that I used. It was available free of charge on Google, and do check them out. They do have quite a beautiful range of slides, all available on Google. So thank you to Slides Carnival for this presentation. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you again soon.